City Boy, issue 5, Greg Pak and Mike Choi on art. So the cliffhanger of the last issue was that Swamp Thing was about to enter the story.
Yeah, make his presence known.
And sure enough, that is indeed what happens. There's basically this idea. We get a little bit of a flashback to start with his mother not being very good with him. But City Boy is out. He's left the city. He's out in a forest or wherever, trying to be away from cities because he doesn't want to affect any more cities. He doesn't want to, create this city that Darkseid wants. So he thinks, I'll get away from any city. I'll go out in the wilderness, into the rural areas, and I'll just stay there. And then what he discovers, whilst he's sort of like basically kind of having a bit of a panic attack as he's trying to control his powers. Basically what happens is that City Boy starts manipulating an anthill. It's like the city of ants still counts, right? It's not just a human city. It's this city that's created by animals. And it actually ends up creating a giant ant out of the sand hill, right? So it's like, okay, so this can even happen with that. And of course, it's Swamp Thing who comes in and kind of puts a stop to it. I mean, he gets stabbed at first, to be fair, but he's Swamp Thing, so it's fine. It's not a big deal. But basically, Swamp Thing's coming to see if, like, City Boy needs to be taken out. Like, you might destroy the Parliament of Trees, you might destroy everything with these powers. And I love that he brings up the Parliament of Gears. He brings up, metal and the machines and all that, and says, I've encountered these things before, but you don't really fit into that because you affect both natural and unnatural cities. You affect man-made cities, but you also affect, an ant city. So it's different than the idea of, like, it's almost like the idea that he's manipulating or giving form is one that is created by a group in terms of them creating a society, as opposed to the physical structure. Even though he's manipulating literally the physical structures when he makes the objects and things, it's less about that makes it a city and more about the community that makes it a city. But it ends up being a bit of a therapy session with Swamp Thing, kind of like, okay, I can tell you don't actually want to cause damage. Like, that's because at first he's like, I have to stop you, but then it's like clear, no, you actually don't want to, like, harm anyone. You don't want to create cities. You're trying to avoid it. So let's talk about this, because I can control the green, and maybe he can help him.
But I was gonna say, him sitting out there, it says he's like 7 miles from Bloodhaven, right? And it's this moment that he's trying to find peace, and even in that trying to find peace, it causes him panic. Right, because he's up in his head. He's having these memories of his mom, right? And it's not what he thought it was. She's yelling at him and all this other stuff. And then he starts to realize, like, well, is it me? Am I bad? Am I why this power is coming out this way? And that's what makes makes him realize about the anthill and him being able to touch that city.
That's the emotional hook of the issue, is that he's been trying to, like, convince himself that he's not bad, because he once heard the idea that, people aren't bad, they just make bad decisions, or they've done some bad things, but it doesn't make them bad. And he wants to believe that because he has this, this idea that he is bad. And this all comes together at the end, because when he does let the emotions get the better of him and the city starts to form, and it seems like the apocalyptic city that might be built is starting to form, and the intergang scientist is saying, yes, be bad, be the person I know you are, create the city. It's almost like, it's coming to pass. And the reason why this all happens, of course, is because Swamp Thing tries to help him with finding out where his mum is. Basically, he's like, hey, touch grass is literally what he says, which was him making a joke. But he shows him using the green to find out what happened to his mum. And it didn't look good last time, because it felt like, wait a minute, this is when the nuke went off in Bloodhaven, so it might not be a happy ending here. And sure enough, they find out that the mum and her new, like, husband and child were out in this wooded area waiting out whatever was going on at the time, and they did in fact die when the nuke went off. And there's like a memorial, like not a tombstone, but like just like a memorial plaque out here in the forest. and this is like a shock, and it's like it has a kind of interesting direction to take this in, is that now he can never have the confrontation with her. He can never really have the answers that he wanted to ask. He has to just kind of live with this. It feels like kind of a ballsy move to not give the character that closure, and I think it's interesting. Yeah. But obviously, in terms of the immediate plot, it makes him very emotional, and that's what starts to manipulate everything, where all of a sudden the nearby structures start to all form together, and the edge of the forest and the roads all start to kind of come together to become something. And it just ends with Intergang scientists sort of looking on and being like, yes, Cameron, yes, my good boy. So, I think what I've been impressed about with this book is that, you know, it was a lot to take in for that first issue or two, as it was setting up like what the characters' like powers were and how they worked and whatnot. I think it has gotten better as it's went along, because these last two issues I feel like have been really honed in to what the character's emotional journey is, and the idea that he's fighting these like emotions. I think ultimately the lesson, or what I expect to happen by the end of his story, would be that he learns to control it and uses it when he wants to for good, but doesn't let it overcome him. It's more something he is able to actually keep in check. But we'll see.
Yeah, because a lot of his trauma seems to come around the mom, and now that he knows, like, because this whole thing that, you know, he says is he's losing control of his emotions, is like, it can't end like this. I have so many questions, right? And that's, you know, it's just something he's going to have to learn how to deal with. And so that is, like you said, that is kind of a ballsy choice here for this new character that, you know, that we don't know too much about. Is, you know, there's always places that we can inform this, right? It is comics. We can, you know, get around it. But the idea for Pac to have, like, this guy won't get closure, at least not yet. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, you know, it's a bold move. On the art, obviously Troy's art's been pretty consistent, but I did especially like when Swamp Thing sort of takes him into the green, and we get just kind of the green kind of lines of like connecting to like the buildings and the leaf coming out of the brick wall and stuff like that. I thought that looked really cool. And then, of course, there's that panel where the nuclear bomb's going off behind them. It's very different. It gives it a nice different look. It actually kind of looks like it might even be a slightly different artist, or at least different coloring on those pages.
Yeah.
Because the face is shaded very differently, I think.
Yeah. There's almost... Yeah, there's... We said flat a lot on this issue, but this is a very flat coloring style. Yeah. So maybe it's just the coloring that's different.
Yeah, I'm just looking to see. Wait a minute. Oh, okay, interesting actually. So there is two artists. It's Minkayu Zhang, and then it says underneath Mike Choi, artist of the In the Green sequence. That's interesting because normally it says pages so and so to so and so, but it's actually titled the sequence here instead. Forgive me, I was going off League of Comic Geeks, which just told me the one name, but fair enough. So yeah, that's a different artist. That's fair. In that case, cool. I keep the praise that I gave, but I'll also praise Young for the consistent art elsewhere.
Yes.
Because, you know, there's a lot of fun, because, you know, when Swamp Thing's like taking on the big ant, that's kind of fun. There's a lot of detail in Swamp Thing. You know, that full page spread where Swamp Thing sort of like grabbed City Boy with a vine and he sort of got him upside down. There's a lot of detail in some of these big pages, so it's not low effort at all.
No. Well, and I like the differences in the Swamp Things, right? So in the green, he's got a more kind of woodsy appearance, almost like in almost in Rambee's Swamp Thing, versus outside in the regular, he's a lot more bushy and kind of mossier. So I do like the distinction in the art for Swamp Thing here, which is nice. But yeah, man, this is just, with each issue, his origin, not even his origin, his whole vibe becomes more and more tragic. And my heart really goes out for this kid.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess because I guess it's meant to give you the vibe of someone who's kind of like, if a kid's abandoned and homeless, he's kind of left to the streets, which is the city. So it's the idea that City Boy is this like abandoned child is kind of perfect in a way, but obviously it's a very sad story. But hey, What are you rating City Boy issue 5?
I'm gonna give this a solid 7.
I'll go as high as the 8. I thought it was really good.
There you go. All right.
I thought it was good.